Human captain joked about marrying her someday. Years later, alien war queen returned. The command deck of the starship Valor quaked under another brutal impact from the scarred horde's acidic cannons. The tremor shuddered through the deck plating, knocking a cascade of sparks from overloaded conduits. Captain Mason gripped the armrests of his chair so tightly his knuckles blanched, the pulse of battle roaring in his ears. Around him, the bridge was a chaos of alarms and desperate shouts, blue emergency lights casting every face in stark relief. On the main tactical display, the Allied fleet flickered, a latticework of red, too many icons winking out. Nearly 2/3 lost in under an hour. Each vanished signal meant hundreds of lives. The cold data stung more than the worst wound. Lieutenant Commander Harper's voice cut through the din, steady as stone. Forward shields at 6%, hull breaches on decks 3 through 8, pressure containment failing. Even as she delivered the grim news, her hands danced across her console, rerouting power, sealing off dying corridors. Mason glanced at her, saw the strain carved into her brow, the resolute set of her jaw. She was as battered as the ship, and just as unyielding. He pressed the comm, his voice grave. "This is it. Prepare for final defense. Make them pay for every inch." His order echoed through the bridge, the crew straightening, resolve hardening behind desperate eyes. On the main screen, the scarred armada advanced. Their vessels, grotesque and organic, moved in flawless formation, their chitinous hulls glistening with lethal intent. Each scarred ship seemed alive, pulsing with unearthly energy, their cannons spitting acid fire. The horde pressed in, a tidal wave poised to sweep humanity into oblivion. A sudden alert blared. Ensign Lee, hunched over the sensor station, shot upright. "Unidentified ships emerging, Vector 13 by 42. Space itself rippled, veils of darkness torn by a burst of incandescent energy. Through the rents drifted a formation of vessels unlike any Mason had seen. Sleek and predatory, their hulls gleamed copper bright, like molten metal sculpted by some ancient artist. They moved with an animalistic grace, darting through debris, weaving between burning wrecks. Then, with a synchronized sweep, the newcomers unleashed lances of pure energy that tore through scarred ships in streaks of white-gold brilliance. On the command deck, time seemed to freeze. Harper's whisper was barely audible. "Sir, those ships aren't in any records." Her eyes were wide, reflecting the dazzling display as the coppery vessels cut into the scarred ranks. The newcomers moved with breathtaking precision, wild, unpredictable, and lethal. Where the scarred had been a storm, these ships were lightning, darting and striking with surgical power. Scarred hulls split open, burning with viridian flame. "Incoming hail from the alien flagship," comms reported, voice tight with awe and confusion. The main screen flickered, static giving way to a face that seized Mason's breath. She was striking. Her fur a radiant sunset orange, fox-like ears upright and alert, a long sunset-hued tail flicking with impatient energy. Her face, human-like in structure but wilder, was framed by a mane of dark flowing hair. Across her cheeks, old scars traced silent stories of survival. Her eyes, deep and mesmerizing, held the gravity of someone who had stared into darkness and survived. "Greetings, Mason," she purred, her voice both velvet and steel. "Did you think I'd forget what you promised me?" The bridge crew exchanged bewildered glances, heads whipping toward their captain. Mason felt his heart stutter, a memory clawing its way through years of blood and regret. On the screen, the woman smiled, a wolf's grin softened by some distant tenderness. Her fleet swept through the scarred, breaking their formation with almost joyful violence. Mason seized the opening. "All ships, rally on the newcomers. Let's end this together." His command blazed across the comms. United, the battered human vessels fell in behind the copper fleet. Energy lances and railgun fire intertwined, slicing through the Scarad with renewed fury. The last Scarad ship erupted in a flare of green fire, scattering shrapnel into the abyss. The silence that followed was both a reprieve and a challenge. Mason's war had changed. Its end suddenly, impossibly uncertain. 12 years earlier, on the savage wilds of Auriga 4, Mason had lain broken and half-conscious in the shadow of a fallen shuttle. The air had smelled of burnt ozone and alien foliage. Through the haze of pain, he'd awoken to a pair of mesmerizing eyes and gentle, clawed hands tending his wounds. Nyari, a Vulperin scout, unknown to any human record, had knelt beside him. Her fur had been sunset orange, her fox-like ears twitching at every sound, tail flicking with restless curiosity. Even then, scars had traced her face, signs of battles survived. In her hidden camp, sheltered from the planet's storms, they'd exchanged stories by the glow of a crackling fire. She told him of her people's warrior traditions, songs sung to the moons, duels fought beneath stormlit skies. He'd spoken of the burdens of command, the weight of Earth's hopes and losses. They'd laughed, argued, shared silences. A fragile bond had grown, as delicate and resilient as the mountain flowers she placed by his bedside. When his rescue beacon finally drew a human gunship from orbit, Mason had stood at the edge of her camp, heart warring with duty. He'd called down to her, half in jest, half in yearning. A woman as fierce as you deserves a hero's promise. I'll return to claim you, Nyari of Vulpyra. She'd grinned, wild and free, her laughter echoing as the gunship whisked him away, a sound that haunted him through every battle since. Now, in Valor's hangar, Nyari returned, not as the scout he'd known, but a queen in her own right. She strode from the coppery flagship, armored in plates burnished to a deep, warm glow, scars gleaming like medals of honor. Her eyes were sharper, her posture regal, but the wild energy remained. "Captain Mason," she greeted, voice low and rich, each word a challenge. "You've grown into the man you promised to be." Her Vulpyran guards fanned out behind her, eyes wary, hands resting on ornate energy blades. Mason bowed, heart pounding. "Your Majesty, welcome aboard." Nyari laughed, the sound rolling over him, predatory and warm. "So formal now, Mason. Is this the man I once pulled from the jaws of death?" She stepped closer, the wild scent of her fur mingling with the ozone of battle, and Mason felt his pulse race. "I've come to collect what was promised." The air was electric, tension crackling between past and present. Mason gestured, struggling to keep his composure. "Shall we discuss this in private?" "Yes," Nyari replied, smile edged with mischief and memory. Inside his quarters, the room felt suddenly small, the silence intimate. Nyari moved with feline curiosity, trailing her fingers over old medals, hollows of lost crewmates, the battered Earth flag on the wall. She lingered at a photo of Mason, much younger, unscarred, before turning to him. "You kept your word," she murmured, voice softer now. "You became the warrior I saw in you, all those years ago." Mason touched the ragged scar along his jaw. "War leaves its mark on all of us." Nyari's eyes softened, the fire within them flickering with old pain. "Do you remember your promise?" "A dying man's joke," Mason replied, voice rough with memory. She leaned in, warmth radiating from her, her tail curling around his leg with gentle insistence. "Was it a joke? Or a prophecy?" He met her gaze, seeing the years etched in the lines around her eyes, the hope, the loss, the longing. "Why now?" he asked, the question heavier than he'd meant. For a moment her composure slipped, the queen giving way to the woman beneath. "Because, my promised mate, the Scarred have taken all from me, and I need a human's cunning to reclaim vengeance." Their fates, entwined by an old promise, now hung on the edge of war and hope. Fleet Command assembled an emergency session. The Situation Room hummed with a brittle energy, senior officers standing at rigid attention around the holographic table. Admiral Rowan's image towered above them, crackling blue and twice as severe for the distance. His face was thunder, every syllable a blow. Let me get this straight. You allied with an unknown alien race because of a promise made over a decade ago? The words echoed, heavy as gravity. Captain Mason stood at attention, shoulders squared, spine iron straight as a firing line. The glare of Fleet Command, admirals, commodores, war-weary captains, pressed on him like a second gravity. "Sir, we were facing annihilation," Mason answered, voice controlled, but edged with the exhaustion of battle and the sharp memory of what had almost been lost. Rowan's eyes narrowed. And these Vulperans arrived at the perfect moment? Their timing was fortunate, but their strength is undeniable. Mason met the old man's gaze without flinching. Another holographic projection shimmered into focus. Admiral Singh, her voice sharp as cold steel. Their technology could be a threat. We know nothing of their motives or capabilities. You invited a new power into human space with nothing but your word as collateral. Mason's frustration simmered beneath his crisp tone. The Scarad are the immediate danger. The Vulperans have proven themselves. On the field, with their lives. Without them, the fleet wouldn't exist. On what terms? Rowan pressed, his voice of ice. Mason hesitated, feeling every eye on him. A formal alliance, cemented by marriage, between their war leader and myself. The words dropped like a meteor. Silence crashed down on the war room, heavy and absolute. Even the hum of consoles seemed to die. Rowan's eyes hardened. "You're dismissed, Captain." Mason saluted, turned on his heel and strode out. His heart pounding, mind racing with the weight of decisions made in the crucible of war. On the hangar deck, tension coiled in every glance, every clipped word. Human crew hustled through damage control, watching their new Vulperan allies from the corners of wary eyes. The Vulperans, sunset-furred warriors, armored in burnished plates, tails flicking with restless energy, walked the deck in loose, predatory clusters, scanning, assessing, never quite at ease. Lieutenant Commander Harper met Mason at the lift, her expression grim. "We've had incidents, sir. Vulperan warriors, correcting human protocols, discipline drills in the mess, a brawl near the flight bays. Tempers are flaring." Elder Kor, grizzled even by Vulperan standards, his sunset fur shot through with silver, stood nearby. A prosthetic leg, battered and ornately engraved, lent him a lopsided gait. He watched the humans and his own people with cool patience, eyes narrowed as if seeing through more than just walls. "Where's the War Queen?" Kor's voice was rough, each word measured. "In her quarters, reviewing our tactical data," Mason answered. Kor's whiskers twitched, unreadable. "She will want purpose, Captain, and your people will want proof." Mason nodded. "Then let's give them both." He drew Harper aside, outlining the plan in quick, urgent tones, a joint strike on a Scarad relay station recently detected at the edge of the Vega Nebula. The briefing room pulsed with unease. Human squadron leaders lined one side of the table. Vulperan pack captains lounged on the other, their postures at once relaxed and coiled for action. Mason stood at the head, a holomap flickering between them. Red for Scarad, blue for human, copper for Vulperan. "The plan is simple," Mason announced. "Human squadrons will engage and disable the station's outer defenses. Vulperan boarding teams will follow, seizing the relay core before the Scarad can destroy it." He tapped the map, marking routes and fallback points. "Coordination is key. Split seconds will decide this operation." Lee, the youngest pilot, raised an objection. Sir, their pilots ignore formation. They're unpredictable in the field. If they don't keep tight, we can't cover them. A ripple of agreement passed through the human officers. On the Vulperin side, a pack captain bared her fangs in what might have been a grin. The hatch hissed open. Nyari entered, armored and imposing, every eye drawn to her. The room felt smaller for her presence. Mason's heart skipped. She surveyed both crews, gaze assessing. "You adapt," she said, her voice carrying a note of both warning and invitation. "As we will adapt to you. The Scarred expect predictability. Let them face chaos with purpose." Mason nodded, his confidence contagious. "We hunt together. No mistakes. No mercy." The battle was a storm. Human fighters streaked in tight formation, their discipline a razor's edge. Vulperin ships swept in wild elliptical arcs, weaving between scarred fire with instinctive grace. Harper's voice crackled over comms, awe in every word. "They're improvising, not following doctrine. They're hunting," Mason realized, watching Nayari's flagship carve a swath through enemy screens, every move a dance of calculated aggression. The relay fell swiftly. Explosions blossomed along the scarred hulls. Vulperin boarding pods slammed onto the relay's surface, their warriors pouring out in a storm of plasma and claws. Human marines followed, covering flanks, the two forces moving in a deadly, beautiful synchrony. Minutes later, Elder Core's image appeared on Mason's wrist comm. "The relay is ours. We have data on 14 Scarred hive systems." His voice was heavy with the taste of victory and the ache of what was lost. On the ruined bridge of the relay, Nyari appeared at Mason's side, her armor scored, her tail flicking with satisfaction. "Your pilots fought well," she said, her voice low. He grinned, sweat and blood streaking his face. "As did yours." She bared her teeth in a sharp smile. This alliance could work. Mason's heart lifted, hope a flicker in the darkness. "Yes, I believe so." That night, the Valor's navigation room was awash in the pale blue glow of the galaxy's holographic map. Star systems twined in delicate filaments, the Scarred advance marked in cold red. Mason entered quietly, finding Nyari alone, her armor stripped away. Her dark hair flowed over her shoulders, a stark contrast to the wild, sunset-hued fur on her ears and tail. She traced star systems with a claw-tipped finger, gaze distant. "You're avoiding me," Mason said softly, breaking the silence. "Am I?" Nyari replied, not looking up, her voice measured, unreadable. He stepped closer, close enough to see the tension in her shoulders, the shadow in her eyes. "Command approved the alliance, conditionally. Treaty, technology exchange, marriage. They want guarantees." She turned, searching his face. "You seem conflicted, Mason." He hesitated, then asked, "Why does this matter to you? Why hold on to a promise for 12 years? It was one night, one reckless vow." Nyari's voice was steady, but there was pain beneath the surface. "Do you know what a hero's vow means in Vulperin culture, Mason? It is sacred, a pledge of strength, freely given. It is a bond deeper than blood." Mason paled, memories of that distant world crashing in. "I didn't know. I never meant, but I did," she cut in gently, "and I accepted. A month after you left Auriga 4, the Scarred came. They devoured everything, forests, cities, kin. I was off-world, scouting. When I returned, only ashes remained. Out of thousands of ships, 20 survived. 600 warriors out of billions. We are the Ember Clan now. Survivors, not a people." He was stricken, words failing. "You've been hunting them ever since." "Yes. They multiply faster than we can destroy them. Every raid, every loss. I remembered your promise. I need your mind. I need victory." I need a future for my people. What's left of them. Mason saw finally that the alliance was not just about tradition or romance. It was survival, the only hope for a dying people. If I accept, what am I? He asked. Nyari stepped close, her eyes fierce and glistening. War King of the Vulperin people, last sovereign of the Ember Clan, the hand that brings vengeance. And if I refuse? She met his gaze, unblinking. Then I hunt alone until the last Vulperin ship is gone. But I don't think you'll refuse, Captain. Mason searched her face, feeling the weight of his vow, old and new, settle on his shoulders. He nodded, steady, resolute. When do we begin? Mason stood alone in the navigation room, the hum of the Valor's engines a low, constant murmur beneath his boots. The galaxy's holographic map spun in the blue-lit darkness, casting cold reflections across his face. Red icons blinked steadily, each one marking a world lost to the Scarred. Each pulse a reminder of failure, of devastation, of all that could not be reclaimed. He let his eyes roam the map, searching for meaning in the patterns of destruction. His mind drifted to Nyari's stories, tales whispered in the hush of alien nights or shared by the flicker of Oregon firelight. He could see them as if they were his own memories, the twin moons of Vulpera rising over canyons that sang with the wind, towers of crystal that caught the dawn and scattered it into rainbows. She had described how her people would dance beneath the silvered sky, their voices a tapestry of courage and joy. All gone now, crushed beneath the scarred tide. His promise to Nyari, once a careless thread spun between strangers, had become something heavier. A lifeline for a dying people, and a burden he could not set aside. He pressed his palm to the navigation console. The cold glass vibrated with the ship's pulse, as if the Valor itself grieved with him. A quiet presence appeared in the doorway, drawing him from his reverie. Nyari stepped into the pool of light, her silhouette tall and strong, but her eyes, those deep, mesmerizing eyes, held a vulnerability he had never seen before. Her voice was soft, almost uncertain. I should not have burdened you, Mason. He turned, the ache in his chest both fierce and gentle. It's my burden now, he said, the words anchoring him to her, to this impossible moment. He stepped aside, letting her in, inviting her into the circle of light and memory. She moved closer, her wild grace undiminished even in this fragile moment. You've decided? She asked, searching his face. He didn't hesitate. I decided the moment you told me about Vulpera. Nyari's gaze sharpened, searching for the lie but finding none. She drew a breath, steadying herself. Is this just about revenge, Mason? About using human strength for Vulperan war? Her words were a challenge, but beneath them he heard a plea for truth. He shook his head. Is that all you see in me? A weapon? A means to an end? She was silent for a heartbeat, then spoke with quiet honesty. At first, yes. I would have done anything to save my people, even if it meant chaining myself to a human's cause. But now I see the man you've become. You know loss. You know leadership. You know what it means to be forged by fire. She reached out, her hand trembling only slightly, and traced the scar along his jaw. The touch was electric, every nerve alive, every memory sharpened by longing. We are both survivors, Mason, both shaped by war. Her fingers lingered and the space between them closed, breath by breath. He let himself feel the weight of her touch, the warmth of her skin. If we do this, he said, voice rough with emotion, it can't be just for vengeance. It has to mean something more, for both of us. Nyari's lips curved into a small, fierce smile. The vow must be sealed, she whispered, stepping so close he could feel her heartbeat thudding in time with his own. In the old way, by fire, by flesh, by soul. Will you accept my pledge, Mason? Will you bind your fate to mine? He answered without words. His hands found her shoulders, drawing her in. Their lips met, the kiss urgent and hungry, years of longing and memory and impossible hope unleashed in a single, searing moment. Nyari responded with a growl deep in her throat, arms winding around his neck, her tail curling possessively around his waist. Their bodies collided, armor and uniform falling away, leaving only skin and scar, strength and vulnerability. The navigation room became their world, a space of shadows and light, of whispered promises and unspoken grief. They came together with a fierceness that was both solace and challenge, finding peace and purpose in each other's arms. Every scar was touched, every old wound acknowledged, every new hope born in the heat of their union. For a time, there was nothing but them. Two warriors, two sovereigns, forging a pact older than war and deeper than blood. After, Nyari rested her head against his chest, her wild hair spilling across his skin. She looked up, her eyes fierce and bright in the dim glow. "The pact is made," she intoned, her voice echoing with the weight of ritual and destiny. "You are War King of the Vulperin people, last sovereign of the Ember clan. Do you accept this burden?" Mason cupped her face in his hands, meeting her gaze with unwavering resolve. "I accept. I swear. I will not rest until the Scarred are nothing but memory." Nyari's smile was both feral and radiant, a beacon in the darkness. She pressed her brow to his, her voice a promise and a challenge. "Let the hunt begin, my king." The asteroid belt at Sigma Drift was a graveyard of lost fleets, the wreckage of ancient battles floating between tumbling rocks and shimmering dust clouds. Broken hulls spun in slow orbits, human, Vulperan, even a few scarred carapace ships, all reduced to silent monuments. In the shadow of this cosmic mausoleum, Mason and Nyari stood shoulder to shoulder on the Valor's bridge, their eyes fixed on the tactical display. They had devised an ambush, bold and surgical. A decoy convoy, cargo vessels stripped of real payload, bristling with hidden sensors, drifted at the edge of the field just within range of Scarrid patrols. Mason traced the plan on the holomap, his finger carving a path through the asteroid clusters. "When the Scarrid break formation to strike, we hit them from the rocks, human rail batteries positioned here and here," he said, marking firing points. "Vulperan fighters will run silent along these vectors, like hunting cats in tall grass." Elder Kor, his scarred face half lit by the glow of the screens, watched with wary eyes. His prosthetic leg tapped the deck, metal echoing with tension. "The Scarred are cunning," he warned, voice gravelly. "Their queens learn. Each defeat makes them sharper." Mason grinned, his confidence unwavering. "Their instincts betray them. The Scarred are compelled to swarm, to overwhelm. If we control the bait, we control the battle." Nyari's presence beside him was electric, her armor burnished to a sunset gleam, her mane of dark hair spilling over the plates. She nodded approval, her expression both fierce and proud. "It is a beautiful trap," she said softly, her gaze never leaving the tactical display. "Magnificent." He looked at her, feeling pride rise within him, not just for the strategy, but for the way she said "my king," even without words. The Valor trembled as the first Scarred destroyers entered the field, drawn like sharks to blood in the water. Mason's voice was crisp over the comms. "All units, wait for my mark." The human crews braced behind railgun controls, fingers poised on triggers, while Vulperan fighter packs ghosted between asteroids, silent and unseen. The Scarred ships were monstrous, chitinous hulls bristling with spines, moving in a predatory lattice. At Mason's signal, the decoy convoy powered up, engines flaring. The Scarred fell upon them, a writhing tide, splitting formation just as Mason had predicted. "Now," he ordered. Rail batteries thundered. Hypervelocity slugs ripped through vacuum, smashing scarred hulls apart in geysers of green ichor. Vulparan fighters burst from cover, coppery hulls twisting through debris, lances of energy skewering exposed enemies. The ambush was brutal, elegant, order blooming from chaos. On the bridge, Nyari's eyes burned with triumph. "Your mind brings order to chaos, my king," she murmured, voice low and intimate. Mason tracked the battle, issuing rapid-fire commands. "Split the second wave. Harper, drive them into Sector 9. Vulpyran strike teams, prepare to board." Screens flashed with enemy data. 7 scarred destroyers shredded in the crossfire, 2 more crippled and adrift, 1 clawing its way clear, engines burning blue as it fled. Within minutes, Vulpyran boarding pods slammed onto the battered, scarred hulls. Warriors in burnished armor breached the carapace with plasma cutters, their entry swift and merciless. Mason watched from the command deck as data streamed in. Enemy systems falling, Vulpyran banners rising on alien bridges. He felt Nyari's hand come to rest on his arm, warm through the cold press of battle. "Magnificent," she said again, voice trembling with pride and something deeper. "The fight is almost over," Mason said, scanning the casualty reports. "Allied losses, minimal. Your warriors are exceptional." Nyari's smile was fierce, edged with desire. "You brilliant human," she whispered, stepping closer. Her hand found his chest, feeling his heart's rapid thrum beneath armor and muscle. "You made them dance for you." He met her gaze, feeling the heat between them spark into wildfire. All around, the crew pretended not to notice the tension, eyes fixed on screens or instruments, their discipline a thin veil over the electric charge in the air. On the main display, the final scarred ship limped out of range, leaving behind only the shattered remains of its siblings. Victory, decisive and overwhelming. Later, the afterglow of triumph still pulsing through the ship, Mason found himself in the armory. The room was quiet, lit only by the soft gleam of energy weapons on the racks. He was inspecting a Vulpyran blade, admiring the intricate filigree etched into the metal when Nyari entered, her movements fluid, predatory. Without a word, she crossed the room, her presence filling the space with heat and intent. She pressed him against the cold steel of the wall, her hands claiming his shoulders, her body pinning him with a ferocity that set his blood alight. Her lips crashed against his, urgent and demanding. Mason surrendered to the storm, hands gripping her waist, pulling her closer until nothing existed but heat and hunger and the taste of victory on her skin. Nyari's voice was a growl, breath hot against his ear. "Mine," she declared, the word a mark as indelible as any scar. "My king, my mate." He answered with equal fervor, his voice rough with need. "Yours, always." Their union was fierce, a celebration of triumph, of partnership, of all they had become together. Armor fell away, leaving only flesh and fire, 2 warriors tangled in the aftermath of battle, forging a new vow with every gasp and shudder. When at last the storm abated, Nyari rested her brow against his, her breath mingling with his in the close, quiet dark. Her tail curled around his leg, a gentle claim. "The hunt is just beginning. But I can taste victory." Mason held her, heart steady and strong, ready for whatever came next. In her eyes he saw not just a lover, not just a queen, but the promise of war and hope entwined. He drew her close, and together they faced the dark, the future bright with the fire of their shared vow. In the infirmary, Mason sat on the edge of a metal cot, gingerly cradling his burned arm. The acrid scent of antiseptic lingered in the air, mingling with the ozone tang of battle still clinging to his uniform. Medics bustled from station to station, but Nyari brushed them aside with a flick of her tail and a look that brooked no argument. She knelt before him, her hands deft and gentle as she peeled back the scorched fabric. Her touch was a caress, her voice quiet, the edges of command softened by something warmer. Among my people, warriors care for their chosen, especially those they cherish. Mason caught her gaze, lifting her chin with a finger. Is that what this is? He asked, searching her face for an answer that mattered more than he cared to admit. A rare vulnerability flickered across her features. I'm not sure, she confessed. Love is rare for us. I thought I'd forgotten how. Her words hung between them, fragile as spun glass. He studied her, tracing the constellation of scars that crossed her tawny skin, testaments to survival, to battles fought and won. Tell me about these, he said, fingers ghosting over a jagged mark on her forearm. She smiled, a small, private thing. This one was from my first hunt. I was 16, eager and reckless. Her hand moved to a silvery scar along her ribs. The fall of Vulpyra. I was 24. I tried to hold the city gates with 100 warriors. I lost all but 3. Mason's heart tightened. You carry them all with you. She nodded, eyes distant. I was once promised to a noble. Duty, not desire. I felt nothing. Her gaze sharpened, fierce and burning. But with you, I burn. She leaned in, her lips brushing his. With you, I live. Mason pulled her close, feeling the tremor in her frame, strength and sorrow intertwined. You blame yourself for Vulpyra, he whispered, forehead against hers. She stiffened. I was away. I should have been there. If you'd been there, you'd have died too, he said, voice firm. Someone has to remember. Someone has to carry the stories. Nyari finished bandaging his wound, her hands lingering. Thank you, Mason said, meaning more than the words could hold. She gave him a wolfish smile. Don't thank me yet. Your recovery will be demanding. He barked a laugh, surprising them both. I can handle demanding. Her humor faded, replaced by grave intensity. The data we pulled from the scarred ships. It's worse than we thought. She handed him a datapad, the display grim. They're preparing a final assault on the core worlds. Timeline. 5 months, maybe less. Mason scanned the projections, mind racing. We can't wait for them to come to us. We have to strike at their main breeding ground, Hive Prime, 2 systems away. He tapped the star chart. It's heavily defended, but maybe not if we go in quiet. A covert strike. Nyari's eyes gleamed with approval and resolve. We use the Scarid's own weapons against them, infiltrate with the captured ships, plant a fusion bomb, and escape before detonation. Mason shook his head. It's suicide, if we're caught. We are bound, Nyari interrupted, her tone brooking no protest. Where you go, I go. He met her gaze, saw the fire and trust there. Then we do it together. 3 days of relentless preparation followed, every hour carved into tactics, drills, and whispered farewells. The team was small. Mason, 4 human commandos chosen for stealth and grit, and 5 Vulpyran warriors, their eyes bright with vengeance. The plan was as audacious as it was desperate. Ride the captured Scarid transports through enemy lines, breach the Hive Prime facility, plant the fusion bomb, and escape before annihilation. The night before departure, Mason gathered the team in the Valor's dimly lit briefing room. A hollow map of Hive Prime rotated slowly above the table, every red vein a Scarid tunnel, every node a kill zone. He pointed to their entry vector. Once we breach, we have 41 minutes before the fusion core overloads. That's our window. No more, no less. If we're late, we go down with the Hive. Lee, the youngest commando, raised a hand, voice taut. What about the scarred queen? Nyari's fangs glinted in the blue light. We end her, she said, voice steady as stone. The approach was silent, the captured scarred ships gliding through the asteroid shadows. The hive loomed before them, a colossal living structure, walls pulsing with sickly bioluminescence, tendrils stretching toward the void. Mason felt the Valor's deck shudder as they rammed through the organic wall, the hull screaming in protest. The world turned sideways, alarms blaring, lights flickering, blood pounding in his ears. Go! He shouted, leading the charge. Nyari was at his side, blade drawn, her pack surging forward. The corridors writhed, walls oozing and pulsing, scarred defenders pouring from unseen cracks. The fighting was savage, plasma and steel against chitin and claw. They pressed deeper, step by bloody step, Mason's squad covering the Vulpirans as they cut down scarred sentries. Lee lobbed grenades into side chambers, clearing the way as the hive screamed around them. In the heart of the hive, a psychic pressure pressed down, suffocating and cold. Mason staggered, vision blurring. Screams, his own, Nyari's, the entire team's, echoed inside his skull. The scarred queen's mind clawed at them, a hurricane of rage and hunger. Nyari roared, forcing herself upright, her will unbreakable. You will not have us, she bellowed, slicing through the mental onslaught with sheer force of presence. Mason's mind cleared. He saw, in a flash of insight, the swollen conduits feeding the queen's grotesque form, tubes pulsing with stolen life. We have to cut the feeds, he shouted. She draws power from the conduits. Nyari surged forward, blade flashing, severing the first conduit with a spray of ichor. The queen shrieked, psychic assault faltering. Mason and Lee fired into the next, hot plasma rupturing the membrane. The queen convulsed, lashing out, but the team pressed the attack, destroying the connections, weakening her with every strike. At last, they reached the spawning chamber. The queen's maw yawned wide, dripping venom, her body writhing in agony. Mason pulled the fusion bomb from his pack, set the timer, and hurled it into the chasm of her gaping mouth. Run! He shouted, grabbing Nyari's hand. The team fled, the hive collapsing around them. The queen's death throes shook the tunnels, black ichor pouring from ruptured walls. Sirens wailed, tunnels caved, and the fusion bomb's countdown ticked towards 0. They burst through the final membrane just as the shockwave hit. Mason and Nyari tumbled onto the hull of a scavenged scarred pod, the rest of the team close behind. The world behind them exploded in blinding light, the force hurling them into the void. For a breathless moment there was nothing but the brilliance of victory, the silence of survival. Mason's hand closed around Nyari's, anchoring them both as Hive Prime vanished in a storm of fire. They had done it, together. Hive Prime's destruction shook the stars. The explosion rippled through the void, a supernova of vengeance and hope. Sensors across 100 systems registered the cataclysm, and everywhere, the Scarred felt it. Their psychic unity fractured, the song of their queen silenced. Across the front lines, Scarred ships faltered, their formations unraveling. For the first time in years, human and Vulpiran vessels advanced, driving the insectoid scourge before them. On the battered hull of the Valor, cheers echoed from every deck. Survivors embraced, human and Vulpiran alike. For the first time in living memory, hope was no longer a whispered prayer but a roar. The ship itself became a symbol of the new alliance. Engineers, both human and Vulpiran, swarmed over her scars, welding new armor, installing weapons that fused the best of both worlds. Energy lines glowed in Vulpiran copper and human blue. On the parade deck, Nyari stood tall in a new battlesuit, human composites and Vulpiran alloys, the design a seamless marriage of cultures. Her sunset fur shone against the polished plating, and her fox-like tail swayed behind her, the fierce queen reborn. She turned to Mason, pride in every line of her stance. "We've shown they can be beaten," she declared, her voice carrying to every corner of the ship. "Now we press on." Word spread. Allied fleets rallied to the Valor's banner. Messengers crossed the stars, bearing news that the Scarred were vulnerable, that the tide had finally, impossibly, turned. A great war council convened in the Valor's new strategium. Human admirals in crisp uniforms, Vulperan elders draped in woven mantles, and armor adorned with ancient runes. Elder Kor, his prosthetic leg gleaming, stood beside Nyari. On the holomap, red icons bloomed, scarred fleets massing at the rim of known space. "They're preparing a last strike at Earth," Elder Kor intoned, his voice grave. Mason, now accustomed to the weight of leadership, faced the council. "How long?" he asked, his tone clipped but urgent. Admiral Rowan's lips pressed into a thin line. 5 weeks, maybe less. They'll throw everything they have at us. If we fail here, there will be no second chance." The council murmured, tension thick as the gravity wells outside. Then Rowan turned to Mason, drawing a new insignia from his coat. "You have proven yourself, Captain. As of now, you are Fleet Admiral Mason. The defense of Earth is yours." Mason accepted the stars, feeling the eyes of 2 worlds upon him. Beside him, Nyari nodded in approval, her hand finding his beneath the table, a silent pledge of partnership. The days that followed blurred into a storm of preparation. Every hour was filled with briefings, war games, and midnight strategy sessions. Human and Vulperan officers bickered and bonded, learning each other's strengths and rhythms. Trust was built not in speeches, but in sweat and sacrifice. The Valor's corridors became a tapestry of languages and laughter, doubt replaced by growing confidence. Through it all, Mason and Nyari grew closer, their partnership deepening beyond the battlefield. In rare moments alone in their quarters, armor and titles fell away. The weight of command was shared in whispered reassurances, in hands entwined beneath starlight. One such evening, as the fleet lay in silent orbit, Mason sat on the edge of their bed, Nyari curled beside him. The lights were low, the world outside held at bay. He reached for her, voice unsteady with emotion. "I love you," he said, the words simple and seismic. Nyari's smile was fierce and gentle all at once. She pressed her forehead to his, her eyes shining. "I love you too. That's why we'll win. Because we believe in more than survival. We believe in each other." Mason kissed her, the promise of hope sealing their bond. The battle for Earth dawned beneath a bruised sky. The scarred fleet blotted out the sun, their ships a living shadow across the horizon. Sirens wailed in every city, families huddled in shelters gazing upward with mingled dread and hope. Aboard the Valor, Mason stood on the command deck, flanked by Harper and Elder Kor, Nyari resplendent in her battlesuit beside him. The entire Allied fleet hung poised, a shimmering wall of resolve. Mason's voice cut through the tension, transmitted to every ship, every soldier, every desperate heart. "Today, we fight for all free peoples, human and Vulperan. Remember, the Scarred can be defeated. Stand together, stand proud. Let this be the day we reclaim our future." The order went out. The fleet surged forward, human destroyers and Vulperan hunters weaving together. Railguns and energy lances turned the void into a storm of light. Scarred ships rammed and clawed, but the defenders held, precision and ferocity entwined. Nyari led her warriors in boarding maneuvers, her blade a streak of copper and blood. Mason coordinated the fleet's movements, reading the battle like a living map. "Sector 7, hold the line. Valor Squadron, break right." His commands were crisp, his confidence infectious. For hours the conflict raged, every loss a blow, every victory a spark. Harper reported damage, Lee called out enemy maneuvers, and still the Allied fleet pressed on. The turning point came in the battle's darkest hour. Mason, scanning tactical feeds, identified the Scarab command ship, a behemoth veiled in writhing shadows, tendrils of psychic force lashing at the defenders. "That's the source," Mason breathed. "All guns, converge on my mark." The fleet responded as one. Missiles, plasma, and focused energy beams hammered the command ship's shields. Nyari's boarding party pierced its hide, chaos erupting within. At last, the vessel erupted in a blinding sphere of fire, the psychic storm collapsing in on itself. Across the battlefield, scarred ships faltered, their unity shattered. The swarm crumbled, fleeing or dying where they floated. By dusk, the last enemy vessel was reduced to drifting debris. A great cry went up from the surface of Earth, from every battered ship and broken city. Humanity and Volpyra had survived. That night, silence fell over the Valor. On the observation deck, Mason and Nyari stood together, the glass arching above them to reveal a world reborn. The sunrise painted the sky in gold and crimson, light spilling over blue oceans and emerald continents. Mason watched the dawn in awe, his hand finding Nyari's. "What now?" he asked, voice soft in the hush after chaos. Nyari turned to him, eyes shining with dreams and memories. "Now we rebuild," she answered. "Our children will unite our peoples. Their future will be written by hope, not war." Mason gazed at her, hope flickering bright in his chest. "I love you, War Queen Nyari." She smiled, radiant as the sunrise. "And I love you, War King Mason. Now and always." As dawn broke on a new era, they stood side by side, partners, lovers, leaders, survivors, ready to face whatever the galaxy would bring. That's the end of the story. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and write in the comments what you liked most about this story. Our team will be very grateful to you. You can find even more fascinating stories on our channel. See you in the next video.